Welcome to the fastest stuff in town. Today we're Masechtas Nedarim Daf Pei Dalid. We're going to begin at the very top of the Amud Pei Dalid Aleph. So we were learning in our mission in yesterday's daf, if a woman makes a neder that she is restricting hana from brios, the husband is not able to make a hafara. He cannot remove that neder. And the question is, why not? L'chayra, that's inui nefesh. So one shot is that the husband is not in the category of brios. And therefore, because of that, the din is that she can still get hana from her husband. Or, as the Ran explains, he could also get stuff from these people. She just can't get it from them directly. So therefore, there's no issue of inui nefesh for her. That's why the husband cannot be made for. Also, in the event that, let's say, he's poor, or she gets divorced, there's all these possibilities. She can always collect lek shechin peya. So she's not getting hana from those owners because lek shechin peya is really something which is an entitlement to the poor, and it's not connected to those people who have it. Eisvei for the Gemara. So the Gemara asks the following question: Rab Nachman, he posed a question to Rab Nachman. Ubal la machal briosu. Now again, there was a machlokus or different tirutzim. Now, according to the shita, that the husband is not in the category of brios, and therefore because of that, that's the reason why he can't be mefer, because she can just still get hana from her husband. So is that true? But it's not. We learn like this. So he said, this was referring to Tashmish. So the din is that he can remove his chelek, because that's something which affects him, beino levina. And since it's, as we said, beino levina, according to one opinion, only beino levina can he remove his aspect, because that's something which he's makbid on. But for everyone else, there is no kpeda, and you can actually be machalek. You can make a distinction. You can split it. Now, again, utehei mishamashto, so he's now allowed to be with her intimately, because he's able to be made for the neder for his piece. However, she's still going to be in the Tulman Yehudim. She's still going to be usher to everyone else. Now, if you want to tell me that the husband is not concluded in brios, so nidri inui nefesh hein v'yafrla l'chayra, we should say this is a category of inui nefesh, and therefore, because that, he should be able to be made for. In other words, his hafara would work for the other men too, since the neder was really on peros, which is inui nefesh, since it can't be tashmish, since she's married, and it's pashut she's aser b'tashmish. The whole thing makes no sense. How could it be that she's ostering herself to this man and to all other men? You're married. Of course you're not allowed to be with other men. So it must be, it's just the notion of peros. So therefore, l'chayra, he should be included in that, and therefore that's considered to be inui nefesh, and therefore he should be able to be made for it. Says the Ran. Really, the truth is, as we're saying, that the husband is not under the same category as brios. When she's answering tashmish, and she says that she's separating from all men, we would understand that she's obviously including her husband, because she's asking her something in which is really mutter to her, which is to her husband. Because kfar asura ba'omenis, we said she's already usher to those men because she's married. So obviously, when she says the statement, it's muchamilsa, that she's linking her husband in this neder, because everyone else, it really means nothing anyway to usher herself to tashmish. So it must be, the reason why she said it is to usher her husband. The kivan delays lahatera el batashmish baila al karcha nidro hu asher hanos tashmishay. obviously it's on the husband too. And therefore, even though it's true that normally Baal is not in the category of brios, over here it's muchamilsa, that must be she's linking them. Okay. Question 1. Netonim min Yehudim yarva chelkotei netonim Yehudim. Madua bezeh kul yalma moedim de Baal bechlal haYehudim, that he's a part of the Yidden. V'yil b'kainim she'nen henel brios pligi. Because Hacha de ben Yehudim lomul asaratz. Why she asked herself? Aksha kavar surah bil medislim. She's obviously ushered to them anyway. She's a married woman. Obviously, it's being mentioned to aser her to her husband. Okay. Weiter. 2 dots. So the reason why the husband cannot be made for this neder is because it's not an issue of inu nefesh, because she can always get from lekach shechapeya. V'lo katani meiser ani, but it does not mention in this category that because she's poor, that she's also entitled to get meiser ani, which is a little bit hard to understand why this would not be also mentioned. So it must be because meiser ani is not on the table; she's not able to get it. Losanya, it must be because getting meiser ani, you are getting that person. There's what's called tovas hana. That person is getting some benefit, l'chayra, maybe from giving this to you. Losanya bebraisa, meiser ani. It says in the brisa it includes meiser ani she's entitled to get, even though she made a neder against these people. So Rabbi Yosef kasha har bilezer har banan. So it's going to be actually totally on this machlokas that now Rabbi Lezer Omer in Adam Sarach Likrais Shem Al Meiser Ani Shel Demai. So if you have Demai, in which you have, as the Ran says down here, Lokech mi Am Haaretz, you purchased foods from an Am Haaretz, Sarach Aser, so it's Demai. You don't know that the Am Haaretz separate Trumas and Meisers. So the din is, because it's this state of uncertainty, you have to separate Meiser. So Litrum Trumas Meiser, and you have to take off Trumas Meiser, the Nasl Kayin, and you have to give this to the Kayin, Meiser Rishon Gufe, when it comes to, so that's Trumas Meiser. Meiser Rishon Gufe, the 10% that's given to the Levi as we continue on Pei Dalman Beis, Ma'akvul Atzmo, he can keep it for himself. You do have to still be mafresh it because it's still tevel. But once you separate the meiser rishon, you can keep it. Shari mutter lazarim, because meiser rishon according to Shita is mutter to a non-kohen. But meiser mechaber baraya shul hifrish amarts. Maybe the amarts did separate meiser rishon. So therefore, meiser mechaber baraya. If a Levi comes to collect it, you can say, "I'm sorry. Maybe prove to me that this amarts didn't separate already." When it comes to meiser ani, in years 3 and 6 of the Shemitah cycle, you don't have to be mafresh. You don't separate it. Why? The Sfira Lei, Rabbi Lezer, they feel Vade shall have frishum in a Kri in Toivel. Even if you mamish didn't take off 10% of Meiser Ani, and it's 100% Trumas and Meisers were not taken because it's from you, still we're not going to call it Tevel. Shehei Oichel B'misa, I put that in parentheses for some reason. Hilkach Enu Mafrishum Asafik. So, since when it comes to Meiser Ani, if you didn't separate it, it's still it doesn't have the status of Tevel anymore as long as you separate everything else. So when it comes to a Safek Tevel, so a Safek, by case of Demai, we certainly say it's not necessary. That you don't have to separate. So that's the Shita of Rabbi Lezer. That Ein Sarich, Ein Adam Sarich Lichos Shem Al Meiser, you don't have to designate in Meiser Sheni, Meiser Ani, when Demai. Since it's not considered to be tevel, if in case that a person did not separate demai, or chacham omrim, as we continue again to pay down the base, karishem, then actually it's not true. He holds you do need to separate when it comes to vadai, trumas and meisers. You absolutely have to, because the din is that it's considered to be tevel until you separate it, even meiser ani. Vein sarach lafrishay lahafresh. But you don't need to be mafresh it. What does that mean? So the Ran says, "Dim vadai will hifrishu havi tevel." It would be tevel. Vehi ha'oichel men hakri b'misa. Actually, a person will be chay misa by eating it in that state. Avol b'ishim sukan legamri, even though it's complete, everything else was separated. Ve'en tzorach hasakin el hafresh meiser ani Hilkach mafrish u'masafik to sveiku toivel. Okay, so my law, v'man di'ar sveiku toivel, the one who says in a situation like the Chachamim that is considered to be tevel k'saver isli tovas hana. So therefore, there is tovas hana when it comes to meiser ani, which is why, therefore, she is not entitled to take it because she made a neder against them. Mikivan di isli tovas hana lo mahanya. The woman is not allowed to get this. She's not entitled to get this. It says that when it comes to the Dama, you don't have to separate or designate Meiser Ani, Ksaver Sveiko Enu Taivel, because he holds it's not Tavel anyway. Bechosha Sveiko Enu Taivel, Leisli Tavos Hana. There's no Tavos Hana, there's Shari Le Leisnuye, and therefore you'd be allowed to derive benefit from it. Says the Ran, Davka Biditavle Ika Tavos Hana, Lobalam. When it's Tevel, there's Tavos Hana. Ava Bidaloi Tavli Lo, but if it's not Tevel, not. Meiser Ani Lomandi Isli Sveikoi. Eno toivel leispe tovos hana. Skipping v'lo yichalu. The pasuk is v'lo yichalu as kachim b'nei Israel. Hilkach kivan di ispe hana. Since it's hana, asul asnuye. You're not allowed to get hana. Fine. Skipping a few lines to the fifth wide line. Meiser ani shehu atzmo motu lazarim. So he says when it comes to meiser ani, a non-Kohen is allowed to partake of this. Hey. Taruvasoi chomer mimenu. This is the svara. Why would you think that the taruvos should be any more strict? Hainu taima demandis svirule eno toivel. This is according to one who says it's not tevel. It says basically again we're lenient in this regard. Demandis svirule toivel mapli toivel midrasha. He went out from midrasha. Vefil meiser ani. So the pasuk says to even include Meiser Ani, that if you don't separate Meiser Ani, so there's a drasha that maybe also Meiser Ani, if you don't separate, it's considered to be Tevel. So Baya says no, the Kuliyam is Feiko Tevel. Everyone holds in this situation, if you don't take off Meiser Ani, it will be Tevel, which means there is Tovas Hana. So if that's the case, then why, according to the Brisa, why would we say that she can get the Meiser Ani? Rabbi Lezer Savar, Meiser Ani. There's no concern that the Amaretz actually didn't separate Meiser Ani. Again, why would we think that? Especially that it's Mutul Zarim. But he says that different reason, like we see in many places, because in order to be entitled to Meiser Ani, you just have to be poor. You can be mafkar all your possessions, v'haviani. You can become poor, v'shakale. So hule sleep seda. So it's like no loss. So there's no reason why Amaretz won't separate it, because he can just be mafkar everything, become poor, take the Meiser Ani, and then become rich again. So therefore, according to that shita, we're not concerned that Amaretz had separated Meiser Ani. That's the whole reason. That's the reason why you don't have to Likros is a shame, because Amaretz we're not chayshid on Meiser Ani. Rabban and Savri nichse lo mifkarish. Person's not going to be mafker their possessions. The mirtas, he'll be afraid. Dilma zachem hu inish achrina. Maybe in the meanwhile someone else will grab it. Hilkach nechshadu. Therefore, we actually are concerned. There's a distinction. One is Meiser Ani, which was divided in the house, Diksiva Bei Nesina, and where it's written the word Nesina, Manosata Level Agar Geimer. Mishum Hachi Asur Le Lisnuye. That's the reason it's Asur to get Hana in this situation. However, Kan b'Meiser Ani hamischach b'Saich Hagranos. The other one was in the silos. Kivan Diksibe V'hinachta b'Shrecha. You leave it in your gates. Shari Lesnuye. So you're allowed to get Hana. Okay. So if you look in the Ran says like this: Rabbi Omer, the Masnisen Mayri b'Meiser Ani. So why our Mishnah doesn't include Meiser Ani? Must be there is Tovas Hana. But why? It's because the Meiser Ani hamischal posech habayis. It's in the house. Kivan shabal bayis mechaku. Since the Baal Bayis is dividing it, the Nasnu, and he's giving it out, and it's already in his house, tovasana shalo. He gets the tovasana. Mishum hachi lo katan b'masnisin. When Meiser Ani, it doesn't mention Meiser Ani. Daham Mr. Rabba. It's usher to her. Ubraisa Myri b'Meiser Ani hamischal b'seicha granos. It's still in the fields. Shemanichu b'garin v'chol haroitz lito yitol. Anyone who technically wishes to take it can take, and therefore there is no din of. We don't say in this situation that it is considered to be tovasana. There's no tovasana in that situation. Okay, so let's look at question TB30. And I wrote question which is way off. So the answer is either. The question is, they argue if Meiser Ani is Toivel, is it still Tevel? And the Brisa holds it's not Tevel. And since it's not Tevel, Memelu Leisle Tovasana. There's no Tovasana. Bahave Hefker Koleket Shechopeya. It's just like anything, like Koleket Shechopeya. Or the Mishnah is talking about Meiser Ani, which is divided in the house. And since it's divided in the house, the din is that there is tovas hana, and that's the reason why it doesn't mention that case in our Mishnah, Meiser Ani, because Meiser Ani, which is in the Hamischal B'Seicha Bias, there is hana, and therefore that's why it says v'nosata, right? You give it, right? You're actually physically giving, and therefore that's the din. However, in the other case, it's just vinachta, you're leaving it, which means anyone could really take it, and therefore for that reason. There is no tovasana. Okay. Kohanim Levim Nehenin Li Yitlo, etc. Cool. So our Mishnah said that if she would make the declaration, goes back to Pegim on the Beis, she says, I'm making a neder against all Kohanim, so Yitlo al Karcho, they can still take it. Now that in itself is going to be mashma something. Let's see what that's mashma. Says the Gemara, Alma Tavasana inu mamoin. It must be that Tavasana is not money. Since the Kohanim and Levim can take the Truma, there's obviously no situation, there's no Tavasana. Because if there's Tavasana, how can the Mishnah here say that they can take it? What right do they have to take it? It's Aser Bahana. So if that's the situation, it must be because there is no Hana. There's no Hana being given over here. Because it's Edo Mammon. For Kohanim Elu, Ulavim Elu, they specify Neheninli, so Yitol Acherim, others can take Avul Lahani Lo, which is mashma those people cannot take. But why not? It must be because Alma Tavasana Mamoin. So that's why they can't take all the other people. So it's a stira. So Rabbi Oishi Lukasha, Rabbi Yosi, Rabbi Yehuda, the Sanya. Hagoyniv Tivloi Shel Chaveroi. A person steals tevel of his friend, the ochloi, and he eats it. So he eats tevel. So what does he have to pay back? So the Gemara says, Mishalim lo demei tivloi. He has to pay the value of the tevel, Devar Rabbi, which means even the trumas and meisrus. Why? It must be, says the Ran, demei chulin shabai, u demei trumas and meisrus, lefi tavas hana, because he holds that there is Tovas Hana, and Tovas Hana is Mamoin, and that's the reason why you have to pay back everything. Rabbi Yosi, Rabbi Yehuda, only the Chulin, but the Trumas and Meisers, it's not yours anyway, so it must be Ma'ilab Hakmifli, that this is Gufa the Machlokas. The Rav Sabar Tovas Hana Mamoin. Rabbi Yosi, Rabbi Yehuda Sabar Tovas Hana Ena Mamoin. So that is a proof that it must be a machlokas whether or not tovas hana actually has the status of mamoin, and that is the exactly what the machlokas is about. We can finish this, put that one to finishing the Amud. We're going to save this for tomorrow's daf. Okay, so we saw TB 30. Let's see question 2. Kainim kohanim nehenenli yitul al karchai. Mashtam is saved the kainim kohanim elu do yitul hamaydim. So there's 2 answers. And one could be the goof of the machlokas is Tovas Hana Mamoin. We're going to see the other answers on tomorrow's daf.